Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiffany Dell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast. We look back at a roundup of the weekend's action, and it's a weekend all about sports cars. From big sports cars at Le Mans to little ones at Silverstone, with Superbikes from Italy and British Superbikes, same sort of thing in Scotland, and all sorts of things in between. Plus, there's Supercars from down under and a really entertaining debut for NASCAR at the Iowa Speedway. But first, in the news, what are we going to talk about first? There's quite a few little bits and pieces happening.
The FIA
don't wind me up. Don't wind me up.
The rules.
Just because it's a big manufacturer,
allowing a 17-year-old. They're making special dispensation for a 17-year-old who hasn't even won a Formula 2 race yet to have a super license, whereas they wouldn't make any dispensation at all for a 22-year-old that won 6 Indy Lights races, 7 Indycar races, was wanted by, I think, Alpha Tauri as it was then. I think Alpine were interested, Colton Herta. And they know we can't change any rules. There's no dispensation, no special things. And it's just ridiculous. And I can only put it down because it's Mercedes. So Mercedes have signed up with Andrea Kimi Antonelli, who's obviously the most outstanding talent. But you just have to have a line somewhere in this world. I mean, I agree with them if they're going to stick to rules. I think because Colton Herta was 2 points short of a super license, there could have been dispensation. But this is just for about 3 months. He's 18 on the 26th of August, I think it is. 25th of August. He becomes 18. He can then drive a Grand Prix car for the rest of his life. And yeah, this desire by Mercedes to maybe give him a couple of practice ones, free FP1s maybe, or maybe get him a race in a Williams. I don't know what they've got planned for him. They might not even put him in a Grand Prix car until after he's 18. So the FIA, this called grandeur rule, we have decided to make a special dispensation for outstanding talents under 18, i.e. special dispensation for one person, Kimi Antonelli, thanks to pressure from Mercedes, no doubt.
Well, I don't mind the special dispensation, but what I do mind is one rule for one and one for another.
Well, yeah.
I mean, Colton Herta, how on earth he wasn't allowed a super license is beyond me. And
this Antonelli one, just wait. He'd miss, I think, five Grand Prix he'll miss of his life, of ability, but he won't be in Barcelona. So I don't know. It just so annoys me. I mean, we're supporting fast Freddie Slater, big fans, aren't we? And he won 3 more races in this most competitive Formula 4 championship that he's doing down in Italy. So he's 15 now, isn't he?
Yeah, almost 16.
So we're going to apply to the FIA now. We want special dispensation for Freddie Slater to have a super license because their wording was showing outstanding talent. That's why they got dispensation. So Colton Herta obviously had no outstanding
Slater.
No outstanding and talented at all. Colton Herta. No, he's just American. We don't like Americans.
Yeah, sorry, Colton. But on the Freddie Slater, he is definitely one for the future. He won 3 out of 3 in Macau. Then he won a couple in Imola.
Imola won 3 out of 3. I don't know.
He had a problem with the rear wing, and then 3 out of 3 on the weekend as well. So one to remember. What else is going on in the news? What have you got?
The regulation stories are bubbling ever onwards. With a quote almost every week. Max Verstappen's now come out and said, 30 kilograms lighter is what they're offering. It's nothing. And the FIA come out with on Formula One, both, and Everty. They're going to be lighter, narrower, shorter. About 2 inches narrower.
Oh, it's rubbish, isn't it? It's a bit like when you go on a press launch for a new car and they make up some absolute rubbish, cloudy headlines about nothing, about something that's... It's like the iPhone, isn't it? Every time that gets reinvented, it's, oh, wow, look at this camera. And that camera's been on Android for years anyway. But
Max, the thing we love most about Max, apart from his outstanding talent, is he says what he thinks. He doesn't muck about. When he thought Las Vegas was rubbish, he said so. And he says it needs to be 100 to 150 kilograms lighter, But the problem is, the only way it's ever going to be lighter if they drop the batteries, if they drop the hybrid. There's no other way. They cannot go lighter while they make more batteries. I put on Williams. I don't think Williams are even down to the current weight limits, let alone going 30 kilograms lighter with the new regulations. And the interesting thing about these regulations, where it's all getting more chaotic, the FIA can change the regulations if they give the teams 18 months notice. So that would be the end of June, about 2 weeks' time. Now, they've got their engine regulations solved and everybody's building the engines already that have to be 50% synthetic fuel, 50% electric power. The chassis regulations, because they're panicking now because they've realised they'll be slow round corners, quick down straights, they're changing the aero, and they're still trying to work out how it works. But after July the 1st, when it's within 18 months, they have to get unanimous agreement by all the Formula One teams for any new rules. And as we've seen in the past, the chance of getting unanimous agreements, because in fact they asked the teams to postpone it until October. They said, give us another July, August, October, give us another 3 months, please. And Mercedes said no. So one team, good old Toto. So obviously Mercedes probably think they're ahead of the game. So I think you get that feeling with Mercedes. So they're very, Red Bull have got to build their own engines, and Red Bull haven't got Newey anymore, and maybe we'll have Newey, or maybe I don't know who Newey's going to still.
Ferrari,
of course, so yeah, I know. So Mercedes said no. So now from July the 1st onwards, all new chassis regulations have to be agreed by all 10 teams. So I can see that working out well.
Not a chance. Let me give you a little bit of a. I know you love stats. I'll give you a stat, which will take us nicely into Le Mans. First year since 1934, the same manufacturer has won Le Mans and Monaco, the two of the biggest races in the world. How about that? That's super exciting, isn't it? You excited with that stat?
You're right up with Crofty there. And some of those bloody Crofty, it's the first time an Australian has finished four times in the trot in a season. And the trouble is, when he comes out with his freaking stats that are fed to him, but he's got a statistician there at every Grand Prix feeding these useless things, it actually makes you stop and think, was that right? Who would that have been? What 3 Australians? And it breaks your following of the race. So you lose I want to follow one race now. I don't want to start thinking back about, oh gosh.
Thank goodness sometimes to have a different trail of thought. And what was it Roman Grosjean talking about? Did you see that? He's saying that the Indy calendar, the new calendar, is going to end in August. So it means no racing in September, October, November, December, finishing very early. I don't know whether you saw that.
They always do, but I don't know. When does it finish this year? I've got my magical calendar here, of course.
I think it may finish in July, actually.
September the 15th.
Okay, but it must be next year then. Okay. Right, let's talk about Le Mans.
Oh, Le Mans. I mean,
so I'm talking to a 14-time Le Mans participant and a Le Mans podium sitter.
I've moved my chair slightly. You might notice, regular viewers, because if you zoom in, I've got my Le Mans montage, the photo there. And on that
it's always there, you donut.
I know, but I normally cover a little bit. So I've got my very first Le Mans cars in the top right corner, the Ibec, and then I've got the MK Aston Martin top left, which I led Le Mans for a few laps in. Then we've got the Lister Storm, which we finished in the 90s. I've got the Porsche factory cars on the bottom right, and in the middle, my podium place, third place in 1990 Porsche. So
amazing. And I've got these trophies that are going. You're never going to see these ever again, because after we'll come on to my racing. But I thought I was going to add to those.
Your Caterham ears.
They're going to go in the loft.
I mean, I was working all week, and I was at Strax on Saturday. I was with you racing in Silverstone. So, I was following Le Mans from. It's such a wonderful race because you can keep on dropping back into it, and you can keep abreast of what's going on. 1 o'clock in the morning when you get home, get to bed late, check on your phone, who's the leaderboard. And it was just a leaderboard. It was changing every time I looked at it. It was Porsche leading. Oh, no, it's not Porsche, it's Cadillac. Oh, no, it's Toyota. Oh, no, it's Ferrari. And they had 9 cars finish on the lead lap. And according to some story I read this morning, there's never been more than 2 cars finish on the lead lap, which I would challenge Crofty. Crofty, this is one of those ones that Crofty would say. And I'd say, are you sure? That must have been, are you sure? That's what it says on some article. There's never been more than 2 on the lead lap. And the weather was it was horrendous for drivers. An epic Le Mans. Of course, when you get that awful weather, it's terrible to spectators. There must be 200,000 people there wandering around them everywhere, and they're all outdoors, and there aren't many covered grandstands. So to have been there was probably a really enthusiastic battle to keep out watching the racing. But it just turned out, you had 23 hypercars, 9 LMP2s and 23 GT cars. And those hypercars, 9 different manufacturers. I mean, this new formula is just becoming epic. It really is. And yeah, just as I said, just watching. So it meant this, I worked at 180 Crofty here, 186 drivers. So you talk about the special 20, only 20 to Grand Prix racing, to 186 drivers becoming Le Mans drivers.
What would you prefer? What is the pinnacle? Is it Indy 500? Is it Le Mans?
No, it's always Formula One.
Monaco?
I'm afraid it's always Formula One.
I agree.
It's
such a smaller number.
Yeah, and that's where IndyCar drivers would like to go if they got the chance. That's where everybody would say yes to a drive because it is the pinnacle. But so I mean, there are so many stories. I picked up a few. We'll talk about later, but very few because I'm still catching up with so much going on.
Yeah, likewise.
So I said there was a different leader almost every hour. But it came to this tense finish, which I did see live at the Silverstone, on the television, the clubhouse, the BRDC clubhouse had it on. And it was the 50 Ferrari won it this year. They were second last year. And the 51 won it last year came third. So it was a real Ferrari repeat. Lots of accusations from Porsche that both Ferrari and Toyota have been sandbagging this balance of power, that they hadn't been going as fast as they could, which was aimed at Ferrari last year by Toyota. But his final hour, we had this Danish kid, Nicholas Nielsen, and like his co-drivers, they've all done single seaters early on, but Nielsen gave up single seaters 6 years ago. I think he was doing Formula 4, and he just said, "Well, I haven't got any money, I can't go any further." So he did that Ferrari challenge, one makes it like he won, and then he went into GT racing, LMP2s. Now he's a factory Ferrari driver. And he got in the car with 50 minutes to go. They thought they were out of the race, the 50, because they'd had a door they couldn't shut and they had a long pit stop.
Had to go back in.
They had a pit lane exit infringement, had to do a drive-through. So they thought that their chance had gone. And the number 7 Toyota was now in the catbird seat, as the Americans say. Crofty, you can have
Where does that come from? Where does that come from?
I have no idea. When luck suddenly comes your way, like especially NASCAR happens often because everywhere else is for, and you just happen to be in the lead because the way the pace car worked or something, you're suddenly in the catbird seat.
Wow.
But when they went out, they had 50 minutes left to go. When he got back on the track for his final stint in the rain, the weather, the drive was horrendous. And I can't explain the regulations because they have this energy allowance, which I still don't understand. If you're I don't know. There are some hybrid LMP-H cars. They don't have to be hybrid. They used to be. They don't exist anymore, I don't think. But they monitor your energy use. So you've got so many kilo somethings of energy allowed. And the computers can tell the organisers how much you're using. So you don't run out of fuel anymore or overdo anything because you're being monitored. It's incredible what they can test. Basically, 50 minutes would have normally have needed a splash and dash. So, it was a really extreme time to stay out on the track. The wet weather helped him because obviously not on full throttle so much. But literally, they had the energy on the television, you coming in. He was down to about 3% as he started the last lap. So he had to keep up the pressure of the Toyota on wet tyres, still lapping tired, exhausted drivers to get it to the finish line and win a really tense finish to the race. And so much going on behind. As I said, you can write books about every team's entry. But really nice. His co-driver, Italian young kid, Fuoco, he was going to be a Formula One superstar when he was a youngster. Didn't quite happen for him, but he's now having a great career. And a more Spanish, Miguel Molina in Spanish, 35 years old. Again, he did amateur racing and came up through GTs and did Elms. He won that. So it's really good. These drivers that haven't been big household names.
I was going to say, who were the big household names that were there, Tiff?
Well, Jenson Button was there, of course. And he finished 9th in the Jota. Another amazing story. Poor old Callum Ilott crashed his Porsche on the Thursday nights. Wednesday night's qualification. The 2 minutes before midnight, you're out in the dark, just checking your lights, getting a few laps in, and he lost it. I think there was some mitigating circumstance. The radio said something. I don't know what happened. And so the team said about this rebuild. A new monocoque came from Germany. Porsche sorted out a monocoque that had raced before in the American series. They were doing IMSA. And apparently they reckon it takes 3 weeks to build one of those cars. And they showed the boys in the mechanics on Thursday, with this bare black monocoque and just all these pieces lying around. There was one guy sitting at the front of the car just looking into the footwell, but he didn't seem to be reading a manual because you'd have thought, I'll put that pedal in there. Oh no, I should have put the other pedal in first. I've got to take that one out. There must be a really strict order of how and how they did that in 3 days, because that car finished 8th, one ahead of Bucks. They finished 8th and 9th, the two privateers.
But not only how do they do that, but you imagine the effort, the physical. I mean, I'm knackered after the weekend. But imagine the physicality of doing that and then having to stay up all that time and support the team throughout the whole race as well.
Just so many stories. It was ridiculous. In the end, the top British driver was James Collard, who won last year. He came third in the other, the 51 car, Ferrari. LMP winner, great driver, Oliver Jarvis, who's been on the podium before with Audi in a top level class in the Audi Porsche Audi factory days.
Also, Cadillac as well, surely.
Was he with
Not
Cadillac?
I think.
Yeah, I think Audi had. He's raced for quite a few. He's ended up with LMP2, and he carried these two young Americans on his shoulders. He's their driver coach, which is a popular job, for drivers in the middle section. You coach them. One of which was Nolan Siegel, the kid that went flying at Indianapolis and didn't quite qualify in the end, and raced at Road America last week. 19-year-old. And his coach, the other American, was, and I'm sorry to pronounce this again, it's spelled Bijoy Garg, Bijoy, then Garg, Bijoy Garg, a 21-year-old American who's racing in the American Sportscars series. So a wonderful little stories like that's just one out of 62 teams, and every one has a story of joy and tears, and this is what Le Mans brings.
It does, and a couple of Ryan Cullen and Vector Sport, they came in 5th, but they were leading at one point. Yeah, they did.
Everybody said they were led.
Yeah, DK Engineering said the same thing as well.
Yeah, Cottingham, was out there. He had a crash as well in Thursday qualifying. I think, which probably embarrassed him, but these things happen. Yeah, in GT category, Porsche's won the big GT with a 911. But the best British driver was Darren Leung, the British champion. They came second in one of the factory BMWs. I should imagine he was probably the amateur driver, because I think they still have to have this balance of gold, silver, and bronze drivers, even at Le Mans. And who else boomed? Of course, he was Rossi's teammate. And that was another great story. Again, apparently the drivers prayed on Friday. There was more Valentino Rossi fans than anyone. Even Jenson Button was put into second place, probably in stardom. But Rossi's car led for a while, but sadly, when it was raining at night and his teammate was out on slicks, he lost control and put the BMW in the wall. And just so much going on like that. So I'll keep. It
must be so hard to see that what dry line or what wet and what grip you've got basically in the night time.
In the wet, especially
Sebastian Ogier was there. He was there. I saw he was there. He was a big name as well for Toyota. He was visiting.
Was he in the team? I was visiting.
No. Sorry, no. And of course, Oliver. It wasn't Oliver Gavin. Was Cadillac, of course, not Oliver Jarvis.
Yes, yes, you're
sorry.
Right.
I am really knackered. I got to say. How do these Formula One guys do? I guess they're not. 54. I guess they're not packing up their car and all their kit and towing it down the motorway.
But that race would be more mental exhaustion, when you're on those. And Oliver Jarvis was just saying that he was leading last lap. I think he had about almost a lap lead. He had a fair big lead. You can't slow down too much because your tires get cold. And he just said he about 20 times in the last day. He thought he was he actually missed a chicane in the last stint. He was out there for 2 hours, just peering through the screen, which was probably getting wetter and dirtier as the race went on. So, yeah, absolutely amazing. It was so good to see so many people. Like the Lamborghinis were running well for a while.
Yeah, fifth again for Iron Dames, 5th or 6th, I think.
The Peugeots, sadly, they put the wing on the back. I read somewhere they thought they'd be quicker down the Mulsanne Straight. Now, they had the wing on the back. And I thought the whole point of the wingless one
less drag.
Was less drag.
Yeah.
But see, sometimes it isn't so, because if you put the wing clear a bit higher, you I don't know.
Were you going to say the Peugeot crashed under the safety car?
Oh, did it?
Did you see
I missed that one. There was so many crashes. Well, old Kubica, he got into trouble, didn't he? Because he put one of the BMWs in the wall. He killed one of the BMWs completely by putting him off under brake. He got a penalty for that side swipe. The BMW had a terrible time. I mean, the first hypercar in the wall was one of the BMWs after about 20 minutes. I was watching that live at the start of the race. So many stories. We can't go on.
Such an amazing race, really,
Yeah.
really amazing. We should go one year, just go for a bit of a jolly.
We'll
Hopefully
go
get
for
some
jolly.
sunshine, not that awful weather they had.
I saw a few influencers that have been invited out there. That Johnny Smith bloke was there with his mate, Sniff and Smith. They were out there.
We were
with
invited,
Porsche.
but we had other things to attend, as we will come on to in a moment. Just the catbird, by the way. So catbird is a South American bird, and a baseball commentator in 1942 called the winning position, or the enviable position, the catbird position, and it just stuck from there. So nothing too exciting.
What's special about the catbird's position then, or seat?
Well, it didn't really say on. Wikipedia.
Are you disappointing me now? I thought you were going to come out with a really good
There's
answer.
nothing.
I could have said, there you are, Crofty. That's what you need to do, explain things better, and you failed me. Bikes. No MotoGPs this weekend, but Superbikes in Italy and Scotland. World Superbikes. And it's, again, the tracks drive me mad. Misano, they had a British GT championship, or no, not GT, the Fanatec GT, which was just dull to watch. We watched on turn. One of those tracks that just twists and turns. It's just curbs and grass, or curbs and green paint, which of course bikes touch green paint, you get a track limits. You never knew, if you just looked away from the television, came back, you couldn't work out which corner they were going through at the time. And the pack just spread out. You don't get racing. You get skill. I agree. The front guys.
I don't think it's that bad. You've always thought it was a bad track for bikes.
Which one? Misano. Yeah. So it just doesn't work. And but however, skill does shine through. As entertainment, it doesn't work. But maybe for the best to come to the front, to the top of the pile. Top rank Razgatlioglu on this BMW. Nobody else could even get the top 10 last year. Well, top 6, maybe. I haven't got the full stats. He won all 3 races. Vainly chased by the Ducati factory boys of, I think, Bulega it is, or Buleja, at 3 seconds. Bautista had 2/3, and he dropped it in race 2. So the only other person on the podium was Alex Lodes with his Kawasaki, who I think had a 3rd place in race 2 after Bautista had dropped it. Jonathan Ray, the former British champion, who was always up the front, who's now switched to Yamaha, had a horrendous crash in race 1. I mean, he just came as the back of shot. All the other bikes were coming towards us. And you just suddenly saw this little tiny motorbike tumbling, a little person just tumbling along in front. But he's back out next day, race 2 and race 3. He didn't finish very well, but he's probably very battered and bruised. So yeah, dull to watch. I'm sorry, Superbike boys, they're not always exciting. It was an interesting race because of Razgatlioglu tracking down the Ducatis, but not the specialist. Whereas up in Scotland, oh no, I mustn't do accents. They had the classic biblical.
When you say
Scottish
up in Scotland, are there any other tracks other than Knockhill in Scotland?
Not to my knowledge anymore. Because there used to be the one in
competitive
Edinburgh.
Tracks. Yeah. Okay.
I think they just got Knockhill now. But it rained and it rained and it rained. But bike fans, I mean, I don't think the crowd is huge in numbers because it's such a short little track, but it was rammed everywhere you could see around the banks, and they're all brollies up and getting soaked. But the story really was, which was good for Scotland, was this hometown favourite Rory Skinner from Perth. You remember we were following him when we do our Moto2s and Moto3s, we mentioned all the British riders because there's so few of them mainly. And of course, whereas Jake Dixon's been up in the front of Moto2, we saw Rory Skinner last year. He was always down the back and good interviews and trying to do well. He actually had a contract for this year to have a second year of Moto2 where he could actually gain his experience. But we all know motorsport contracts mean very little, and he was eased out. So he's come back to Superbikes. I don't know what his results have been so far, nothing spectacular. But he came second in the first race in the pouring rain, chasing home current champion, Tommy Brimewell, and his Honda won it. And then he came to win the second race. So he had a second and a win, and he came 4th in the 3rd race. So just a wonderful hometown hero story of Rory Skinner coming back to Superbikes. Race 3 was won by Christian Iden on a Ducati.
They needed to perk them up a little bit after their awful football on Friday night, though, in the Euros.
Yeah, that's about in order to cheer the Scots up.
Yeah.
So then, still staying in Britain, we go down to sunny Silverstone. Apart from in qualifying, where the Caterham invasion was back, and Paul Woodman was back, and in the 270, I'll get it right, 270R class, I called him 270S and 270 everything's in 720Ss, making a return, Paul. And how many were in your race? 44 was it in your Caterham race?
39 in ours. There was nearly 50. So you have Academy first, nearly 50 in Academy. Sam Parker, anyone that's ever watched any Caterham racing, Sam Parker does the interviews in the pit lane. She was racing in Academy, and then she was getting straight out of the car and doing the interviews as she came in.
Oh, she?
How good? Yeah, she's brilliant.
And also for Motorsport, man, Parker Motorsport. She's the wife of, isn't she?
Yeah, Stuart Parker, she is indeed.
Front running a Porsche team, Team Parker.
So she did really well. She could have just got on the top 10, but she I think she was 12th in the massive Academy race.
She was running 7th and had a big drop. There were so many sudden dropbacks. I was following all the races with you racing. Well, you can explain from in car, because you went out on Thursday and Friday, and had a couple of little test stations, did you?
Yeah, I did, and we had some biblical weather, which was good. I quite liked the rain, but I was just I was out of practice, and also I was just so worried about the car in qualifying, and I was getting overtaken left, right, and centre. So
we'll point out now that in Paul Woodman's previous Porsche Caterham driving experience, being the Caterham Academy press boy, his car was repaired for free. Whereas now all of a sudden, Mr. Woodman owns a car, which I believe is now for sale when we're here. Now owns a 270S, as he's now bankrupted himself racing it. So you're a bit more careful with the old damage limitation. But qualifying was just super wet, wasn't it? Well, you ended up with 21st out of the grid.
21st. It was biblical, but no excuses, because it's the same for everybody. But when we came in from a red flag and went out again, I realised I was massively off the pace, and but yeah, I never picked it up. So, and that's a really bad place to start in any race.
You had an epic race one, though. Classic Caterhams everywhere. And what you had to go off to avoid a crash, drop to about 32nd or something, you reckon, or 30th into the 30s.
I did. I had an amazing race. I don't think anyone really picked up on it other than yourself, because obviously you'll follow me, because everyone's there to follow their own people. But I dropped down to 31st place or 32nd or whatever it was. And it was just the most amazing. I don't think I've ever driven so well. I got through people and got to 11th, which was then behind the lead pack, which I couldn't catch up. So I was on my own for about a third of the race, certainly a quarter of it. So that for me was my best race. And then I started right in the mix on race 2. There's 3 races in the weekend. Race 2, beautiful sunny weather on Sunday. Yeah. And it was hard, really hard. They're all very good drivers in the sort of top pack, and I hope nobody minds me saying that. They're all very, very good. There's one standout called Ben Timmons, who won all 3 races, actually, exceptional talent. But everybody else is there or thereabouts. But
it was quite sort of I was expecting more slipstreaming, but it was actually quite sensible and out in that front 10 that you were in.
Sensible.
Well, the front 5 was sensible. It was the 5 behind the top 5. You're having that huge battle with that young girl who's doing really well.
Megan Bruce, she does GB4 as well. She's brilliant, and it was really fair. And I spoke to her and her father after, and we're just talking about neither of us wanted to do anything to our car, and we just wanted to be clean. So whereas maybe some of the other guys would go for the gap, we were sort of backing off and just very respectful. We had a really good race.
I'm only judging on one corner, so I obviously didn't know what dirty tricks were going on around the back. But you survived that one. Again, you had all 4 mudguards on. I was quite surprised.
Yeah, didn't even get a single solitary tap on that one, which is good. So I finished 8th, so I made 3 places, which I was very pleased with. I got bloody jumped at the second last quarter. Got jumped at Brooklands because I went into 5th instead of 3rd, so I made a schoolboy error. And so I lost the place. But anyway, and then the last race a
bit more hectic, wasn't it? It was a bit more aggression. Horns were growing. Race 3, everyone seemed to be gloves off. Let's go and hit someone else. Yeah,
well, I don't think anybody felt like that, but it ended up being like that. It's just one of those races where, all weekend not much went wrong with anybody, but it's one of those races that everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Not for me. Again, I was very lucky. Had a tap up the back, but other than that, I was super lucky. I avoided a massive crash at Brooklands that you would have seen. I sent you the clip this morning. I had to move out. I went on. I nearly.
You were pushed wide. We saw it. I think you almost touched, but But epic, right? So Caterham. So go back to the Caterhams. You've had a wonderful weekend. and you love these Caterhams, I know so much. And I said 149 drivers were there on the weekend. So what does it cost now, the academy, where you have to have never raced before and not have had a license?
Yeah, this is one thing that
How much is that
frustrates
now?
me. It's about 35 grand now, so it's gone up, but you still get your car essentially.
You own the car,
plus
yeah.
you get all the races. But they've got to clamp down, like Ginetta do. You've got to clamp down on people buying a car for a year before, going out testing for a whole year, and then doing it, because that's virtually the same as racing. Because especially if you get a driver coach that talks you through the racing and the etiquette and stuff.
You're doubling your budget then, aren't you? You're 35 grand, you're spending another 35 grand on your driver coach testing. And
but if you just sold your company for 10 million quid or whatever, you don't care. It doesn't matter. But it is brilliant. I got up to 4th place in the last race, but then they red flagged it, and I got 6 technically. So I made up.
You got 6. I left the track before the final results came up, so I was waiting. You got 6. Oh well,
yeah.
You must be very proud. But you got to be proud. You haven't raced for nearly 2 years, and you're on the pace of the front boys, just hanging on their coattails.
I'm proud because I'm proud you were there as well. That was always good. Paul Goldstein, I want to say he had his first win in 270. That was very good. Poor old Freddie got super unlucky. Freddie Chiddick's in the 310. Yeah. He got T-boned, so he's looking for sponsors as well. And Joe and Mark were solid in the 310s as well. But Joe was just back after a broken foot.
Over the weekend, you were run by Williams Engineer. What do they call the team?
Williams Motorsport. So Williams Automobiles, and they got a motorsport division. They were good fun, weren't they?
Really professional, great turnout, beautifully presenting cars. But if I go along as a complete no one then and say, hello, Williams, can you run me do they own the cars there? Or is it all people own I've got to buy the car first.
So for example,
take it to them.
Dr. Andy Palmer is a good example. So he is the ex-Aston Martin CEO. You had a chat with him. He was in the Williams tent. So he would buy his car from someone like Williams, one of the 5 or 6 dealers in the UK for Caterham. And you can't have support for Academy or Road Sport. You can only have full support once you get into 270. But they can still take the car to the track for you and still maintain it away from the track.
What would that cost me if I go to Williams and run me for the season?
A weekend is going to cost you, I guess, about 1,500 quid with your transport, but maybe a touch more, touch less. It depends on who you are. And there's some brilliant teams as well. That Williams really, they've been going since 1911. These guys know what they're doing. But
the price of a race-winning second-hand car that might be on the market shortly, then what would that be? If I could get a car that could.
It depends on what you want to go. They always used to go for 25 grand. This sort of car used to go for about 25 grand, but a couple of people. It's all about the supply and demand, isn't it? Because then
when it's ex-Paul Woodman,
Well, then what do? People take their V-box off, but people take their bits and pieces off. We don't want to sell it just yet. We'll see. We'll see where we go from here. We had some lovely sponsors, and without them, we couldn't have done it. It's as simple as that. So
it's great camaraderie. Caterham put on the food, and it's a really good weekend. Caterham racing. I'm a fan as well. I'll keep watching it. I saw how knackered you were after the second race.
I was ready to go home, but no, I'm glad I did the last race. It was very intense, and
anyway,
some brilliant racing drivers as well. But
quickly back around the world then. The Aussie Supercars were down in. Where's Darwin up the top, isn't it? Where's Darwin? I think it's right up the top. Darwin's
Northern Territory, where all the big salties are.
And after the Fords, the Mustangs have been making a comeback of late, but it's all Camaros, I'm afraid, in Darwin. They were the top 5.
Has it been all year the same? I'm out of touch.
The Fords, you remember, they have had a few wins. They've been getting closer. Yes, they 1-5 in race 1. The Red Bull kid, Brock Feeney, won the first one, and he won the second one. And his teammate, Will Brown, they have been dominating, really, the Red Bulls. He finished 3rd in race 1 and came 2nd in race 2. But it means that Feeney's closed the gap on the points because Brown's been leading the championship, Feeney's 2nd. So the battle at the top 2 teammates is now closer. And funny, talking about Fords, because I thought they were way out of it. I was just looking at the point standings, and actually 3rd in the points is Chaz Mostert, who's in a Mustang. So just by regularly finishing in, he's collected a lot of points. I think he was the one that won the Ford race recently, so he's been moving up the points. But he's still way behind. The champion is going to come from the 2 Red Bull teammates. Meanwhile, from down under to over west, there's always NASCAR. Now, their first ever race is Iowa Speedway. It was only built in 2006, 7/8 mile banked oval. And you never know with these tracks which one's going to produce great races. You know, it's always when I tell you to watch one, you watch one that's boring. But this was really good entertainment. They had massive tyre wear, and it's such a feature of NASCAR that they'll accept blown tyres, putting them in the wall. You know, you don't moan like mad, like the Formula One drivers of Pirelli ever went pop. You know, they go mental. So it was really, you know, how much camber do you dare put on? Because if you put too much camber on, you get more grip, but you wear your tyres out. So it's, you know, if the drivers take the camber off, the tyres will last. It's sort of one of those, you know, you risk as much as you dare risk. But Kyle Larson again was, I mean, I would only go on about him because he's just so good. He was on pole position, and he was pretty much, he was chased hard. I mean, early on, he was banging wheels with Ryan Blaney. It was because of a bang of wheels after one of the many restarts. Every time there's a crash, there's a yellow flag. Kyle came in because he was worried about, he had wheel wobble. I'm not sure why, but he had this impact. So he comes out last, 35th place, and just drove through the whole field. I mean, everyone else is edging up the, you know, you see your other person that's slowly moving up a pace every 2 laps, or, you know, moving forwards or moving backwards. And he got back to the front again. I mean, it was just an incredible drive. And then on another restart later on, the problem with restarts is that, again, it's all this strategy. That's a wonderful thing about, you know, NASCAR. The people that are running like 20th to 25th decide not to pit for new tyres. So all of a sudden on the restart, they're 1st to 5th.
Right.
So the people that were the leading bunch, so now I'm on brand new tyres, but I'm behind 5 cars that have got used rubber and probably not even the best drivers in them, sort of midfield drivers. So on these restarts, you know, you've got to negotiate these guys whilst at the same time trying to stay ahead of the really quick guys that, you know, pitted with you. There's on one such restart that Kyle, perhaps being a bit impatient, decided to make it 3 wide. I think it was on the opening corner. It might have been a lap later. I can't remember particularly. But they were going 3 wide around these turns, all race long, you know, just inches away from each other. But the guy inside him, Daniel Suarez, the Mexican guy, who'd only put 2 tyres on, therefore had less grip than Larson.
Wow, they do that often on just one side.
No, yeah, you'll gain 8 places at pit stops because, again, it's proper pit stops. It's not 1.9 seconds or 2.1 seconds. It's like 8 or 12 or 15. And so if you only do one side, you gain 3 or 4 seconds. And because everyone comes to the pit lane after the pace car slows you all down, you're all bumper to bumper. So, you know, 8 seconds ahead of you is about 10 cars. You know, so if you only put 2 on, you can jump 7 or 8 places. Anyway, poor old Suarez got a bit sideways with Larson, just gone past him. And as he came back, he just tapped Larson's tail with his nose and put Larson in a wall and out of the race. So all the Kyle Larson fans like me were crying.
See, it's good to see that happens at every level, because it very nearly happened with, in my race. It's just because you see somebody and something else happening, then there's a spin or something, and it does put you off because you're so on the limit.
Even on a 1 mile oval, they are cornering at 132 miles an hour, Mike. It's
crazy.
A bit quicker.
Crazy.
Anyway, it ended up being a good story because obviously it's not good for the sport if anyone keeps winning every race. Max Verstappen or Kyle Larson. So it ended up because it was Ryan Blaney who had been, I think he was on pole. He was on the front row with Larson. He'd been up and down a bit, but he came through to win in his Ford. And it's his hometown track, and he had all his hometown fans there. And also, he hadn't won a race yet this year. He was ran out of fuel 2 weeks ago when he was going to get the win.
That's right.
Just coasted and went down to about 20th. And of course, the shootouts ending, the points for the knockout stages were only about 9 races away. And the only way of guaranteeing a place in the top 16, where it is to win a race. Otherwise, you've got to get through on points. And there's always this tension, which is already beginning to build now, because Joey Logano, former champion, hasn't had a win. Yeah. He's got to battle on points. Kyle Busch hasn't had a win. He's got to get it on points. But as soon as you win one, you're in the playoffs. So it was good. Ryan Blaney came through to win, and a good story. So, yeah, entertaining. Again, we always talk about entertaining, and it was an entertaining NASCAR race. So there you have it.
Stuff. Quick where are we next week? What have we got on your magic calendar next week?
Everywhere. I don't know if I'll get any sleep at the weekend. I'll be on Sky going times 30, times 30.
We're in bloody Germany next weekend as well. Oh. Watching England play.
It's not on the weekend. It's Tuesday.
Oh, is it?
It's a Tuesday. Okay. It's not a weekend, luckily. We have at boring Barcelona. Don't get too excited. After all this recent Formula One amazing stuff with everyone catching and overtaking Verstappen and Red Bulls, I don't think it's going to happen in Barcelona, a big aero track. Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3, all going round nose to tail without much overtaking. And F1 Academy, where, of course, it's the Abby Pulling versus Dorian Pain show. Although Pain couldn't race at Le Mans. She broke some ribs or hurt some ribs without saying nobody knows how she did it. Maybe she fell off a bicycle.
They normally do.
but the trouble is here, I mean, this has been a bit brutal. But, you know, supporting the Caterhams at Silverstone was the Formula 4, British Formula 4. So I was watching the race. And of course, Abby Pulling's creating this great PR, you know, she's winning, she's leading the Formula 1 in front of Formula 1 crowds. But I watched her in the Formula 4 going round in 11th place. I think she was 10th in one race. She had 10th and 2 11th places. And if I was managing Abby Pulling, I'd pull her out of F4, because this is the problem that, you know, whilst you can look great on the telly, this F1 Academy and huge praise. And again, you know, they made a huge fuss about when she won the Formula 4 race at Brands. But it was a reverse grid race. You know, I think she qualified 10th or 11th or 12th. I think it is. They reversed the top 12. So she was put on pole, or second, I'm not sure exactly which. And therefore, you know, she did win a race. So it is brutal, you know, climbing this ladder and trying to say who's. And I think we can't get too false in our praise of people without really checking out, you know, how the results came about. So if I was Pullings, I'd pull her out of British Formula 4 for a while. Because I think she's going to do well in this F1 Academy, which will earn her a drive next year in the Formula Record. Last year's champion, Marta Garcia, they gave her a paid-for ride in the Freca, Formula Renault Freca thing, which is what Antonelli won. Very competitive series, not Formula 3, one series below. But again, Marta Garcia, she's running about 24th and 23rd in this sort of 40-car field. So she's come from being a heroine of winning. Hero, can't have female words anymore, can you? Heroine, no. So that's a brutal world out there. So I didn't want to say it, but in a way, having stood there at Silverstone and saying, well, there's Abby Pulling, you know, running 10th and 11th. IndyCar. So more entertaining, I believe, will be IndyCar at Laguna Seca. Tricky track, not that much overtaking, but tricky, but entertaining because it's spectacular. Uphill, the famous corkscrew, and you see the drivers, always IndyCar drivers, opposite locking. Most entertaining, without doubt, MotoGP at Assen. This fabulous Dutch motorbike track that ends with a famous chicane where there's always overtaking, some real high-speed swooping corners, huge crowd close to the fences. In fact, close to the fences, on Twitter this morning or somewhere. No, not on Twitter. I'm about to find it now because I never find it. And I want to try and get this film from somewhere, from someone, if it's there. If I go to, no, I can't see his name. I'll have to sometimes get to old... The little ginger-haired, red-haired kid at Silverstone.
Are you allowed to say that?
Redhead, it's ginger-hair. I don't know now. Sorry, Father. I think it's about 6 years old, but it suddenly reappeared on my Instagram. I never know, how do I get back to previously seen
It's a shame in this world that you're not allowed to say things. I mean, you don't want to offend anyone. How do I get
back to previously filmed things on Instagram?
Send it to me afterwards. Send it to me afterwards, and we'll put the clip
view older posts. I've got view older posts now because I've got to the bottom. I'm going back to older posts. I'm completely view older posts.
There was also Brit Car at Silverstone. It was a packed agenda. There was Brit Car were doing a bit of an endurance thing.
I'm sure you've all seen this. This is why you need sound and noise, and you need spectators close to the track.
What was this young lad doing with? Okay, here we go.
So I don't watching that. Yeah. So he's just at Silverstone.
Yeah.
And he's seen motorbikes going past him. And I reckon I'd love to hear from him. I'd love to know who he. I want that film on Twitter because I can't keep it on Instagram.
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
And that's what motorsport is about, being close to it and it being noisy. It's just brilliant.
So for those of you that are listening, a young lad, and he does have strawberry blonde hair, a young lad is so excited. He's probably about 3 or 4 years old, and he's so excited just to hear the noise and the
being close to it. You know, that's the trouble at Silverstone. These grandstands, you've got gravel tracks and runoff. You're miles away from these little cars sometimes.
Yeah.
So where was I? Yes, that's why Assen's so good. They're so close. Action, brilliant racing. The IMSA boys with their hypercars, like the Le Mans cars, they're at Watkins Glen, another great track up in America. Super Formula, the Japanese top series goes to Sugo. Sadly, no Teo Porcher has given up because he's got this IndyCar drive now. And I think it's now an all-Japanese lineup, which is a bit of a shame. We haven't got any. So always famous Super Formula for being where Europeans and South Americans went when they couldn't get a Formula One drive, and they'd done Formula Two, and they sort of, when I went out there did Formula Two myself. Yeah, gave me my career. British GT, they got off to Spa for their British Championship round a week before they did the Spa 24-hour race. So my brother's team doing the Lamborghinis with Barwell, they're in Spa this weekend and Spa the weekend after with different drivers and different championships. Back home, British Touring goes up at Alton Park, always really entertaining. Should be great to go up there if you live around Alton Park. And NASCAR, of course, has a race at the New Hampshire 1 mile oval. So hectic racing all over the world. And,
busy next week. Thanks for joining this week. We'll see you hopefully next week as well. We'll be there. Hopefully you will be there.
Might be a Caterham for sale. Offer good money.
Or sponsorship. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.